Hello everybody, welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm José.
I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about a film called Custody, Jusqu'à, garde.
We've just been Googling what the title literally means, and it does appear to mean until custody.
I should be able to translate. I do speak French, but actually this one kind of escaped me, so...
I liked in the film where the kid was giving directions to the dad, because that was all stuff I remember from like French when I was 13 years old. À gauche, à droite.
Yes.
What floor are you on? Deuxième. So I was like, I don't fucking need the subtitles for this bit.
But let's tell people what the film is about.
Yeah, so Custody is directed by Xavier Legrand. It stars Leo Drucker, Denis Ménochet, Thomas Gioria, I don't know how you pronounce it. And it's about a custody battle over an 11-year-old boy. The film opens on a legal hearing. There's a judge, the mum and dad are there with their respective legal representatives. And actually the mum and dad are really in that scene very little. It's the legal representatives take the focus there, and it's all about saying, okay, the mother's representative is saying he's violent, he's hit the mother, he's hit his daughter who's getting on for 18 years old.
Yes.
So he shouldn't have custody and he should pay such and such in child support. On the other hand, the father's representative is saying this is all misunderstanding. This didn't happen. He's a good man. He's got. You can have your references from various people that say he's a good person, all this sort of stuff. And you're kind of left in the position from the opening scene, which is quite a long scene. It's got to be 10-15 minutes long.
Yes.
From the opening scene, you're left in the same position as the judges, really, saying you haven't got any real evidence of what's happened in these people's lives. You're going on what you're being told, and you kind of, it sort of sets up a little bit of a mystery. You're kind of going, what has happened in these people's lives, and who should get custody, and who's lying about what, because it sets up all these things of these people aren't necessarily just telling the truth. Maybe the 11-year-old boy Julien has written a statement saying he basically doesn't like his dad and he's scared of him and this sort of thing.
He wants to keep away from that man.
Right, and he wants to keep away from him. And this is what kind of catalyses this meeting. But you're going, okay, well maybe, but has he been coached to write that? What, is it someone else's words?
In fact, the father says he's been coached.
Exactly. So that opening scene sets up this mystery and this conflict. And as the film goes on, then you see basically these two people's lives and how the father wants to stay in his child's life. He wants to keep control. The mother is trying to move away, and hide from him.
Yeah, so
that's the premise.
That's the premise, and I just kind of want to elaborate, because when in those first 10-15 minutes or whatever it is, what you see is this man who sounds quite reasonable, surrounded by 4 women, right? Yeah. Because the judge and the lawyers and the solicitors and his wife are all women, obviously, right? So the film raises the question: is this kind of just an innocent man who's kind of a victim of a vengeful wife, or the other question is this like an abused wife who has to keep running and running and running to stay away from this man? But the whole thing is framed around, a man who wants to be a good dad having a right to see his children. And actually kind of so what the film does is it sets thinking about the law in motion. This is the law. A man has these rights, right? And then kind of like the rest of the film is a closer look at the real dynamics of what's happening between this couple that puts into question this law, I think.
Yeah, so I think what the film's very successful at is using the child, Julien, as the kind of battleground between them. Like, the kid's like a tennis ball, he's just batted between the two of them, and there's this whole thing about the dad having custody on weekends, which is... so he's got custody on weekends of the kid, and the kid really... or is it alternate weekends? And the kid really doesn't want to go. And he's constantly picking the kid up from his wife's parents' house. Yeah. She's keeping away. She's moved to
housing estate.
Yeah, housing estate. She's moved to a flat somewhere, and she doesn't want him to know where it is. So it's constantly like this kind of neutral ground almost of pick him up from here, and you don't get to know where we live. And there's this thing of like when he comes back, when the kid is returned after these weekends, he's sort of like his grandparents receive him as though he's like come back from war.
Yes.
Like you know, there's this thing of like, oh my god, you have to spend some time. You have to spend 2 days with that man, which is what they call him. L'autre, actually, in French, the other. And it's like when he comes back, it's like you survived. So they're very, very nervous of this guy, and you kind of see why. Like this is a guy who he's a little bit of a, not exactly a short fuse, but he has a temper, and he's kind of on the edge of fury sometimes, and you can see why. But it's also like exactly the reason that this will all have fallen apart.
The thing is that the whole film is an unfolding, right? So as the film unfolds, you begin to side more and more and more with the child and with the wife, right? You know, so but you know, from the beginning, you're a little bit uncertain, really. Yeah. Is he being coached? You know, why are they putting these ideas into his head when going to see the father? Right, and then you see the father begins to lose his temper, and then actually the father, you know, begins to demand things of the child, and really it's a kind of a verbal abuse that he's doing with his child, right? But it begins with, "Oh my heart, my son, how lovely to see you," and then little by little, kind of the scenes become more and more violent, really. You know, like not physically violent until the end, but really emotionally kind of explosive.
Yeah, so like the kid responds to his dad very little, doesn't really want to look at him, doesn't want to talk to him, and that as that frustrates the dad, his temper sort of gets the better of him at points.
Yeah. But you still think at that point that actually that it's just, you know, this horrible situation that is inciting this response from the father, and little by little as the film progresses you realize, no, he's really like, you know, a violent, abusive, macho man.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about the look of Denis Ménochet. So in English language cinema, he's best known as the dairy farmer in the opening scene of Inglourious Basterds, who's interrogated by Christoph Waltz's Jew hunter character. Monsieur Lapidite, his name is.
Right.
That's what he's best known for. So, which is kind of, you know, it's a very impactful scene. It's very memorable, but it's a small role. Obviously, he's done a lot more work.
He looks the part wonderfully, though. He really does look like a peasant farmer.
Yeah.
You know, from rural France, and he has that look in this film.
Yeah, and as you said, we were talking over dinner. You said he's French terroir.
Yes.
Like that is his look.
Yes. And
he has these kind of tired eyes, these droopy eyes, and this sort of slightly sour, tired expression.
Yes.
But in this film, as well as that, he is built.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like he's not a kind of sort of bodybuilder, but he's a big, stocky bloke, and he's covered in layers of coats and things.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of, it's like his head is slightly sunken inside his body, like he could explode, like he's a giant grenade or something. Yeah. He has this incredible look that is, you could imagine him, he's like a bear, you know, you could imagine him being great at hugs if he was nice, but you could also imagine him kind of exploding and being incredibly threatening, and sometimes he looms, you know, when he stands over someone, because he's a big bloke, and he stands over someone and becomes very, very threatening very quickly. He doesn't really have to do much to make himself a threatening presence physically.
No. But he's got this wonderful look, because he does look like an everyman, and I was thinking, where else have I seen him? And obviously the other famous film that I've seen him in is Aux Anges dans la Maison, yeah, where he plays like the everyman whom, you know, the young man moves in with, and, you know, who's got a son who turns out to be gay, right? And he is like Mr. Everyman, macho, getting his son to play basketball and so on and so forth. So he's got a wonderful look for this, actually, because in a way, you know, his face is quite transparent. You know what he's thinking, really. You know, but it turns to anger so quickly, right? He's really marvelous in this part.
He's very good at staring into space. Kind of when someone else is talking and he's just staring into space, and you can feel anger and resentment and tension building up inside him, but it's kind of not being expressed yet.
Yes. I also want to point out how the film is really a study on, male domination couched as victimhood, right? So the father sees himself, as the victim of a society who prioritizes women with children, and he's left out, and he's aggrieved because he thinks he's somebody who's lost everything, and yet kind of all of his actions throughout the film kind of involve showing you how he thinks he has a right to everything. So when he finally tracks down his wife, he goes through every room. It's not his apartment, right? But he feels he has a right to every room, and he wants to know who she's been with, right? As if he has a right to know, right? And every question or every move into, this interior space becomes kind of like a threat. It alters things. You could see people's fear, right? And actually it's a really interesting thing because this real fear is caused by a sense of male power that comes out of a sense of being victimized. So it's like, an idea of self-victimization that manifests itself at this incredible power to kind of engender terror, which is what he does. And I thought that was brilliant in the film.
There's one moment in particular that I'm thinking of where it's when he finds the apartment and he's stalking through it, kind of starting to own it, and the mother and son are there, and he goes to the kitchen, he has a glass of water, and then he kind of breaks down, and it's, if I was less generous, I would say that it feels like a performance, but it doesn't. It feels like actually he really is breaking down because he is this kind of emotional sort of pressure cooker, and it's going off in this direction where at this one point he's crying and he says, I've changed, in this kind of, not take me back, but a sort of a plea for, kind of acceptance, and he wants to see his son. I don't think, it's not something to me, you might disagree, it's not something that to me felt like the character was faking it.
No, not at all.
It felt like totally real.
It felt totally real, you see. So no, that's the thing, what he's feeling, he's really feeling.
Yeah.
There's no question about that, right? And you do get a sense that he loves his children, and you get a sense that he loves his wife very much. But you also get a sense that he has this incredible sense of entitlement, right? So he's got rights over his children, right? I mean, he's not thinking about what effect he's having on his child. He's thinking about his rights over his children, his rights over his ex-wife, right? Yeah, so, and actually it's because he's not getting what he thinks he deserves that he feels this grievance, this anger, really. Yeah, but it comes out of a sense of entitlement. It comes out of a sense of, male privilege.
Yeah, and when you say about him not thinking about how it affects his child, you get these scenes in his van between him and his kid when he's either picking him up or dropping him off or whatever, and these are scenes in which he kind of the kid is used as this go-between. So it's not just on his side; it's also on the mother's side that the kid is used to send messages. So there's this whole thing about the phone, and in this film, kids, actually the daughter is on her phone all the time to her boyfriend. So that's kind of like a kid using a phone like a normal person, like a normal kid. And the son can't do anything like that. So he's got this phone, but it's like he's ignoring the dad's calls. And then, he has to when he eventually picks up occasionally, the dad says, pass me on to the mum, don't want to do it. And then the mum is claiming that she doesn't even have a phone, which is why he can't call her, and obviously she does. And so the phone becomes this kind of tool in this weapon of war. And it's attached to the kid because the kid has one, and the kid can be used to send these messages between the mother and father. And so these scenes in the car where the dad's saying to the kid, what did your mother say, and who calls me that, man, and why do you call me that, and does she call me that, and it's like there's a small amount of it which is interrogating the kid, but a lot of it is interrogating the wife through the kid. And the kid just doesn't have these answers and shouldn't be put in this position. And so why can't these people actually talk to each other? But they refuse to. And it takes such a toll on the son.
Yeah, except then, as the film progresses, you do understand why she's behaving like that.
Oh, yeah.
So she's not just blocking a communication with her kid. She's out to survive.
No, absolutely. But it's like this. What you say. It's like early on in the film,
Yes.
you do get that feeling. Early on in the film, you are feeling like she's up to something too. And of course, as the film goes on, you realise that, as you say, she's trying to survive and whatever. But at the start, it feels you I suppose when you don't know what's going on, as you say, you sympathise with the dad more because you really feel like his sort of because you're confused about what's going on, and you're seeing it more from his side. You feel his anger, desperation of being left out of his kid's life.
Yes. Anyway, I thought it was a fantastic film.
I didn't.
I know.
Even though I'm saying all this stuff about
That's right. So tell me why.
I had a very bad time. I mean, not say I should have had a great time, but I found it very boring. I think that it's a film that looks like it's well made and actually is pretty uninspiringly made.
Oh, I disagree.
Go on.
I think it's brilliantly made. I was thinking when I was watching it, because the thing is, it makes you feel terrible. There's no other way of putting it, right? It's kind of, it is kind of torture to see this poor kid being tortured, and then at the end you have like the wife being tortured. It's emotionally wrenching, really. So, and I was thinking, why does anyone want to make a movie of this? Like, who wants to pay money to be like emotionally wrenched like that, for like an hour and a half? And then actually I thought, well, the answer to that is that it does make you understand the situation better. And I think for me it did, right? That, you think, why do people do these things to each other, and how do they get caught up in these patterns of behavior, and, and actually I think the film explained it to me. It did give me insight into it. It did help me understand. And certainly it helped me understand how women are often victims of a law that aims at fairness and equity, right? And then kind of they risk getting killed for that. And I thought the film was absolutely brilliant, because it begins so simply. It just begins with these artfully composed shots, but just very simple shots in a way. There's three people on one side, three people on the other, right? And back and forth the conversation about she did this, he did that, the child said this, the child said that, the law is this, right? So that kind of seemed like overly simple in a way. But then as the film unfolds, I thought it was so bold in its choices, in how it framed things, in how it actually kept a certain distance so you could see people behave in relation to each other. Yeah, like I thought, for example, it was very interesting that when they did the scene of the child visiting the paternal grandparents, right? It was always in kind of a medium long shot, so that you saw all of the characters almost all of the time interacting with each other, and you get a real sense of how the grandparents also felt the abuse onto their grandchild from their son, right, to the point that they exploded. So I thought that kind of interplay, allowing you to see kind of all these dynamics and relations at play within a frame was brilliant, so I loved all of that, and I loved the way that it managed the tension. Right. Well, that's it. I mean, I actually thought that it's one of those films that seems kind of very simple, because there are a lot of close-ups, right? And two shots and shot reverse shot and things like that. But actually, I just thought that it was beautifully done, and that actually there was a rationale for those choices being made, really, and then there were like beautiful things, like at the daughter's birthday party, how actually you couldn't hear anything that was being said, right? I loved it. So that the mother and the daughter and the sister all knew something that you didn't. And I thought that was very tense, and actually I thought initially it was about the disappearance of the child, and then it turns out it's just the presence of the father outside, right? The way that the shots are held, like in the bathtub scene, I thought that was just like fantastic. It's almost held too long and becomes kind of unbearable, But I thought it worked on me beautifully, really.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I would also have said that shots were held too long, but for me, it's because I wanted something to happen. I wasn't feeling, that sense of terror.
Oh, yes.
Really, I really wasn't. Even though I understand everything that you said, and I totally see it. I really do. I just didn't feel it. Like,
Right.
and I kind of, I get how sort of, there's a kind of structural, kind of elegance to the film where it starts off with this extended scene of civil disagreement, basically. It's like the parents aren't even allowed to talk to each other in this scene. This all happens through the intermediaries, and then by the end you've got the dad firing a rifle at a door. It kind of breaks down so completely. I get that, and I think it's kind of elegant, kind of clever, but I just felt like everything that I saw in the film, I felt didn't really kind of emotionally affect me or interest me that much, and B, I felt like I had seen it. And I couldn't tell you like exactly where I'd seen it, but I felt like there wasn't a kind of original thought or observation.
I don't agree. I kind of anyway, you can't disagree with some of what you say because but my experience is that I haven't seen it.
Sure.
I haven't seen it done this well.
I feel like I've seen EastEnders episodes that talk about this stuff just as well.
Probably.
Actually,
that might be something. Because it is the kind of thing that television soap opera probably does better than movies. I think the sense of terror that the wife conveys when he just touches her, right? And you could see that she's just bearing it up. She just wants him to go away, but she's going to play along. And, I thought it was just fantastic.
I think there are some wonderful parts like that. I will absolutely agree. That one bit, it's after the guy's, it's when he's crying, and then he goes to hug her,
yes.
And she is just kind of perfectly, he's all around her and he's sobbing away, and she's kind of perfectly still, and she doesn't know whether to kind of engage in the hug or not. She just kind of stays still. It's like dealing with a dangerous dog.
Exactly, she's managing the situation.
So there are moments which are fantastically observed like that, but I still do think that even those really great moments, they didn't add up to enough for me.
Okay, well, for me they didn't, even the closing. So the husband comes in, he now knows where she lives, he's determined to come into her house and talk to her. Because it's somehow as if he's got a right to talk to her when he wants to, just because he wants to. Right, just because he's the man. I mean, I do think actually that, the exploration of masculinity here is fascinating. So, just because he's the man and he's the former husband and he's the father, he feels he's got a right to walk into her apartment in the middle of the night just because he wants to talk. And actually it doesn't matter. He obliterates her completely. Her wishes not to talk don't mean a fucking thing to him. Right? And so then he takes a shotgun. And actually I love that also. Like he's trying to bang the door down. And doors are not as easy to bang down as in the movies. Right? So he tries and he tries and he tries and it doesn't work. And the neighbor calls the police. And then he shoots 3 cartridges through the door, almost kills his son in the process. He actually does physical damage to him. The son loses the hearing as a result of, the bullet going so close, the cartridges going so close to his ears. And then he finally goes into the house. All of that I found terrorizing. But then what I thought was actually really beautiful was, the neighbor. So the film ends with the door on the events being closed off to her, and then herself closing off the door. And actually, it's very subtly done, but you get the sense that this old woman has lived and empathizes with what's happening to this young woman. And so kind of this concatenation of gazes turns the event, so if the whole thing begins as a social one about the law, and then moves very much to a deeply personal and individual one, that concatenation of looks at the end returns it back to the social. There's lots of women who suffer this. And I love that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyway, it's a film that, I mean, you can't say you'll enjoy because it is kind of excruciating to watch. But I highly recommend it if you go with that in mind, that you're going to have an experience, and it's an experience that's uncomfortable, but that will lead, I think, to a little bit of understanding.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant first feature. Yeah. And particularly the work with the actors is out of this world. I was reading this really interesting piece by David Hare, the dramatist, about actors and acting. And he was saying, the thing about, actors on film is that as soon as you put two people interacting with each other in a frame, yeah, it almost instantly propulses, the action onto something else. Whereas he says you can create a performance in the editing room out of close-ups, right? But you can't really out of the interaction between actors, right? And the interaction between actors is always superior. It requires acting, and that those interactions bring in something different to the picture. And he says, well, that's what I hate television, because it's so much of shot, reverse shot, in close-up, medium close-up, and those kinds of performances can be created in the editing room, because it's much harder to do so once you have, either a two-shot or a wide shot, right? And I thought that was really interesting, because this is a film very much about two shots and wide shots and actors interacting, and kind of, you can see what brilliant and subtle work that they do, like, throughout, of which the father is absolutely brilliant.
He's very, very good. And the kid's very good as well.
The kid's brilliant.
And the mum. Everyone's good in it.
The mum I thought was too closed off, but then actually you see why she is that way,
yeah.
Right? It kind of renders it understandable. So what I thought was a failure of the performance is actually part of the characterization, by the end. So it's brilliant acting, and I think it is quite a brilliant first feature. It had me.
Yeah, we got
responding.
You. Yeah, fair enough.
So I would say, go see it, because actually, if it comes out on television, or at least for myself, had I been seeing it on television, I would have put the pause button on, made some tea, and never returned to it. Because it is actually borderline unpleasant to watch.
Yeah, I suppose if you get into it.
Well. Anyway, my thing is, it's a brilliant first feature with brilliant performances that makes you uncomfortable, but that actually kind of illuminates kind of some of the gender wars that are currently taking place and their relationship to the law and society in a way that I found, quite illuminating.
Yeah. Fair enough. I felt like I'd seen it.
Okay.
Fortunately.
So, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah.
We are on iTunes, SoundCloud, Facebook, and Twitter.
Well done.
Better. Do get in touch if you have an opportunity to see the film, and if you'd like to discuss it further. We're always open to that.
Yes.
And thanks for listening.
It's in French though, so you know. Subtitles.
Yes.
Just so you know.
All right, let's end it here.
I used to work in Blockbuster, and the number of times you try and recommend something with subtitles, and people just went, "Oh no, I can't be doing that.
I know.
Reading's too hard."